Hello and welcome to the 85th edition of AirHacks TV. And now let's start with the topic. So we are right after, I think 2 weeks after the last AirHacks Live. And this was one of the best attended AirHacks Live workshops. The problem was I had even had to reject some attendees because, I thought is this going to be too much? So, there were two workshops. One was about architectures and the other one about events and a little bit focus on Kafka. So there are two other workshops around the corners. Is best practices, hacks and front-end patterns with vanilla web components. So what's the difference to the last web or web workshops? So this time I would only focus on best practices and patterns and how to build an application quickly, and will ignore the foundation or the basics. So I will only gather the basics in case you will ask questions. Now, what is a web component? Something like this, but we won't cover it from scratch as always. So it will be from scratch, but I will go faster as usual. And the next workshop is actually very similar to the first one, except I will only focus on mobile, because if you are building mobile applications which behave almost like a native applications, you can have some shortcuts, and on the other way you have to implement a little bit differently. So during the workshop, I think architectural styles, I got the idea to have a workshop about clouds. I get lots of questions about clouds, and the next one is going to be about AWS in July, and I think I will also deliver one about Azure or the other clouds. Okay, so now related news. So there is also something interesting happened, and this is, so we covered that, go with the podcast. Okay, so what's new is the following. So this was the episode 131 of AirHacks FM. We had an interesting discussion with Christian Bajkov from Blaze Persistence. And he is actually a friend of the show. He also asked some questions and asked me why I hate the DTOs. And so the title is, I don't hate your DTOs. So summary of the thing is, Christian created the library. So actually what I suspected is that the Christian created the library for a large company or even government company or enterprise, but the opposite is true. He created the library for his startup, and the idea was to minimize I/O to save costs in the clouds because it was too expensive. And this is how BlazeDS is a product from Adobe. Blaze Persistence, or was Blaze Persistence, happened. I think it's interesting episode about DTOs and stuff like that, and architectures. And also what he likes to achieve is to optimize performance, and DTOs and projections are byproduct. It's not like crazy back and forth copying of data. Okay, this one is also interesting about actually satellites and Navy and Java. And what you will also appreciate, I hope, I interviewed the creator of LitHTML, who actually maintains the library at Google, and with that chat about web at Google and which frameworks I used and how LitHTML happened. And of course, Cedric Bust, we had also a nice chat. He was actually behind EGBGen, and this is, I think, what inspired Xdoclet. And he's also behind TestNG, and he was at the very beginning of Android development. Okay, this was AirHacks FM. And now let's see. So now related topic. So what was the story? The story was, let's see. So we have a new workshop. And the name is From Redux to Redux Toolkit. But this is an unusual online workshop because it's way shorter than usual. It's a 1.5 hour, roughly 1 hour and 20 minutes. And what I did is I migrated the existing application web components with Redux training. And this application, as you see, there are about 26 new commits, and I migrated the application from Redux to Redux Toolkit, and was able to delete, I would say, let's say, assume, so per class, roughly 50% of the source code, and I think in total 20 to 30% of the source code. And the interesting part is, I got the idea for the workshop from Mr. Christos Troyanov, and he asked me what's my opinion about Redux Toolkit. And I already covered this, but my opinion was not everything is needed from Redux Toolkit, but some parts are great, and I use these parts in the workshop. So now, good news for you, because the workshop happened because of your ideas. If you use the coupon code Redux for free, you get it completely for free. So otherwise, you will have to pay $5. So if you like, just download it for free. Give me a feedback, and I think with that, it is even very efficient and very productive way to build web applications. And I will also cover it in the next EHEX.io workshop. So Redux for free, and I will also put it on YouTube in a more professional way. Will appear this coupon code. Okay, now we have it. So thank you, Christo, for the idea. And we already covered in the previous shows, and I said, okay, it is way easier to record a workshop and extend the application, and I'm using the application actually all the time. So now I also can save some time. So Okay, so now this is also covered, and this is the workshop. Usually it costs $5. I think it is fair. This is 1 hour, 20 minutes, so I call it Lightning Workshop. But you don't have to buy it. You can just download it so you can. There is no renting. You get it forever. Okay. So thank you for your ideas. Now, chat has priority, and Ravi Raj, I think is his name. I hope perfectly pronounced. He asked me, "Hey Adam, I have a very naive question to ask." So there's no such a thing as very naive question, right? So as a junior developer having less than 2 years of experience, I mean, 2 years experience is almost a senior these days, right? So you are supposed to learn every other day different language. So if you stick something for 2 years, you are the master developer, the chief master scientist. Okay, now what will you suggest to learn? Currently, I'm really stuck between grinding lead code. I don't know what lead code is, and doing daily work for developer Spring application. Where should I focus more? So the question is, what you would like to achieve, right? So for instance, I never created a Spring application and still have fun, right? So this is the question, what you would like to achieve. And this is hard to tell. What I can tell you is, for me, it was like, at the beginning, it is always different situation, right? At the beginning of Java, for me, it was clear that Sun is behind the Java stuff, and this is where the implementation happens. And I watch closely what Sun does, what are the ideas, and try to follow what Sun did. And now it's different situations. So I try to say, okay, it's not only Oracle, it's the entire community, and what is the best thing for my clients. Best thing for my clients is write something fast, be independent, and what you also have to be, you have to be somehow successful. So you should be able to sell your ideas, but they should be also beneficial to your clients, right? So for instance, if you look at my web components work, I would say I would sell far more workshops for Angular. Actually, I got lots of requests for Angular workshop at the airport Munich, but I rejected because I don't believe that this is the right path to go, right? So it's a little bit harder, but it's more fun. And now, web components are catching up. So I like the idea. So I mean, I really enjoy it. So, but I think what you should do is, the question is, would you stick with Java or not? I think with Java. So what you could look at, GraalVM, I think is nice. At the same time, the Java SE and JLink and the parallel development in Java SE is also nice. Then I would also take a look, and this is my opinion, right, on JavaScript and web standards, because if you learn a web framework, it's usually a waste of time. The next 2 years, it will disappear. then this is general advice. Don't invest too much time for something which is just a fashion. So because you will then hunt, you will spend, just time to learning from one fashion development to another, right? Then what is the foundation of the clouds? So what I will learn is like container technology, and also newer stuff like Firecracker. This is like something like containers, but VM based, and not necessarily Kubernetes, but rather what are orchestration frameworks on how containers are started and stopped. And also I think it's going to be more and more important, and is security. If you like, if you specialize in security, I think you can be successful. So this is what I would suggest to you. And it's just a lot of stuff, but yeah. And Spring is like just Java E. This is Spring or Java E is just the foundation, the very basic foundation, like the operating system. Joseph Mada says hello, back hello. So, and Mad Max, I would like to top ask Arabin for a tip or getting smaller Java projects to earn some side money, backend stuff, and the tips where to find smaller projects. No idea, I have to admit. I had an Airhacks FM episode with a .NET developer. Let's see, .NET. And this was with Alexei Golub. And he did it. He watched the entire time, jobs for. You have to listen to the episode. So he watched, this was like a job list or something like this, and he applied for the jobs and just did it. Yeah, this is. You should listen to the episode. I also asked the question of how he get the projects, how he got the projects. So in what I'm doing, actually basically everything. So from code reviews to consulting, to firefighting, to initial help. So this is and why it works, I guess, is because I know lots of my clients do it from the beginning of Java. So usually the clients come to me every 10 years, and if you have lots of clients, it's actually nice, right? So this is what happens in my case. So I'm not getting projects from boards or whatever. The people come to me and ask me for help, and then I help. This is what usually happens. Okay, sorry. So this is not, yeah. Next to your 40-hour work, so the Mad Max. If you would like to get a smaller projects, I don't think it is worth doing so. I would try to do some open source work, for instance, and then maybe something happens from there. So, but you have to be passionate about that. Just working after hours to, maybe if you have a hobby, just do something with your hobby and try to create open source projects around that, and maybe you are successful. This is what I will do. Yeah. Now, perfect. Hans-Georg Glöckler says, I must develop a greenfield project for 20 ambulant institutes in health area. And so maybe MedMax can help Hans-Georg Glöckner. So you see, this is where, the, how to call it, socializing happens at Airhacks TV. Now, maybe you should start with the very first question. So at Twitter, Mazi Bert, let's see whether we can open in your tab, see the origin tweet. So someone says to me, so I said removing bloat with, this is an old tweet, and I got, isn't a security nightmare if you leaked your entire entity through REST? I don't think so, because if you already have the entities, it hopefully by choice, right? So you would like to see what's in the table. And we had the discussion several times. And for me, it's like if you design a table, you would usually like to have the table outside the database. Otherwise, it's pointless. If it's already outside the database, it's already a security risk. So if you have a microservice or something like this, the question is, why you should hide fields from the table? So that there could be reasons, but usually, if this is well designed, I would say 90% of all fields should appear in a web app, right? Because otherwise they are pointless. And maybe different take on that. Forget this is a mix between German and English. So forget about that. But we had in our event workshops, Kafka workshops, we talk about a tool called Debezium, which exposes tables as topics, Kafka topics. And if you think about this, it's also a security violation, because in default, what happens is every table becomes a topic, and all the fields in a table, even with metadata, plus all the transactions, are serialized into a topic. So on the other side, I could read from the topic and do whatever I like. It's also security risks. So the question is, dry, I think dry is always a security risk, because if you have one class without any filtering, you can see the entire class or object somewhere else. So, and then you have the security risk. So, I mean, if this is a security concern, right, then you should have a REST interface and test it whether only stuff which should be visible is visible. So that's my take, but it's not per default. I mean, if you would have an entity and create another DTO which is identical to the entity, why is it more secure? So this is what I don't get. Okay. Thank you, Mazabert from Twitter. Now, the next one. Jerry, old friend or young friend, how to call it? A young friend which is known a long time for the show. So, Jerry. And he had an interesting topic about micrometer metrics and MicroProfile metrics, and I recorded 2 YouTube videos about that. And also, I will publish soon an Airhacks FM episode with Erin Schnabel from Red Hat Now about exact this topic. And interestingly, Erin, she also delivered a great session, J4K, Java for Kubernetes, J4KIO, Erin Schnabel. If you search for that, you will hopefully find. So this is J4K, and this is Erin. And she, yeah, you have to now you know her. She delivered a talk at the J4K conference about micrometer metrics, and we had a chat. And I thought she has something against the MicroProfile or different take on that. And what turned out is that we are very compatible from the point of view. And what she focused on were business metrics. It's also my take. I focus on business metrics. And now about micrometer. What's the deal with that? So my understanding is that the MicroProfile matrix is a mix of the annotations, which I like, and also the registries, which I also like, and the implementation, which I don't care. This is like the fault tolerance in MicroProfile, whether there is histories behind or not, I really don't care. And it turns out that the micrometer is more flawless and more powerful than the MicroProfile. So, and the micrometer is more or less like a Java library. So there is a Java library with powerful metrics, and you can use the library, and has nothing to do with web, right? So, I mean, you can have bindings to the registry, but you don't have to. And the idea is you have like the basic metrics, and you can expose them as Prometheus metrics. So in Quarkus there is Prometheus registry, so you can expose the micrometer metrics as Prometheus registry. So I play with it. What I don't like with the current approach in Quarkus is you have to implement something to expose, only a subset of your metrics to a specific URI. So what I think what will happen is that MicroProfile metrics spec will provide a guide or will implement some or will define rules, how the micrometer or how metrics are going to be exposed via different registries. I think this will happen. And right now, we will have to implement this by ourselves. And what I already wanted is to implement, something like MicroProfile-like registry for or MicroProfile like, how to call it, not registry. What I really like about MicroProfile matrix is that you can actually have multiple scopes or registries. Like, there is the vendor, which I don't care, but there's the general matrix registry, which is somehow useful for technical metrics, and which I really care is the application metrics. This is what I would like to see. And the difference in Micrometer is, in Micrometer, everything is flat. So you will see all the metrics, which is fine for machines, but not that fine for humans. What I tend to do is I misuse the MicroProfile metrics for monitoring, but not for machine monitoring. I would like to look at the metrics and see what's going on. Not just Prometheus, also a human. And this is lacking right now, because what is harder to implement in Micro is like filtering dependent on an URI. So what would be nice to have an URI, let's say /business, and just see the business metrics, and /tech, like how to call it, technical monitoring or whatever, and or plumbing or whatever, and there will be all the garbage collectors and so forth. So this segregation does not exist out of the box, and this is what I would like to have. And whether the MicroProfile matrix is then implemented with Micrometer or not, I don't care. So this is my personal take, and I guess Jerry is also on that. And what happened is why they introduced this. My understanding is lots of Spring Boot and Spring developers are migrating now to Quarkus. This is what I also saw in my projects, and or in companies which I work with, and they are accustomed to Micrometer because it's heavily used in Spring Boot, and MicroProfile didn't have Micrometer, so they integrated Micrometer, and they also got the request not just for implementation of Prometheus, also the implementation of StackD and stuff like that. Oh, by the way, where is he? Raj. I think your name is Ravi Raj, R-A-J. Looking at the next generation runtimes, like for instance, Quarkus or Helidon could be also interesting. So Quarkus, Helidon are getting more and more popular. Quarkus more popular than Helidon. What's interesting in Helidon, if your clients have WebLogic, you can take Helidon and you get fully supported environment with the already license from WebLogic. So this could be interesting also for migration. And Micronaut gets also more and more interesting, because Micronaut supports a small subset of MicroProfile, but still it supports. And this is also a very interesting runtime. So okay, very good. So they already chatting here. Now, I think we covered this. Now the next question is, IC Hoti 2K. Ask me. No, wait a sec. This is, yeah, IC Hoti 2K. Is that from Bulgaria? Maybe this is a typical Bulgarian first name, IC Hoti. IC Hoti. I was watching your Afterburner videos and saw you make JavaFix applications. Yeah, I did some. I created some. I want to ask you how to deal with the problem when you develop JavaFix application. How do you protect the JSON class files from decompilers? So this is this boils down to security and decompilation. And I got email from IC Hoti, and I said, okay, I don't answer any technical emails, just put it here. And so there were in Java tools called obfuscators. And the obfuscators try, to scramble the bytecode. So it is, if you decompile the bytecode, it is harder to read. But this is not a true security. The question is, how secure has your solution to be? So is it like, because if I just, change the variable names and method names and decompile the stuff, you can always decompile Java code, then I will still understand what's going on. This is harder to read, it's not maintainable, but I could still hack your application. And even with your database access, I will find very, very quickly, the database access, because I can also decompile the JDBC drivers. So one thing, what you could also look at is try, to cross-compile your application from JavaFX to native code. So you can use Gluon, but you could also use the new tool called JPackage from Java 16. Take a look on that. I created a screencast on YouTube about that. So this could be a solution. So now, the ultimate way would be to encrypt the bytecode. And what you could do, you could create your own class loader which decrypts the bytecode on the fly. So I built something like this, I think 15 years ago or even more. The problem is, where to store the key is always the problem. So what you could do, you could of course try to download the key from somewhere after the user logs in. So the key could be in JSON Web Token application, for instance, JWT, but you will have to to keep the key somewhere in memory. So right. So if I just look at the memory, I still have the key. So it's really hard to secure desktop apps. What you can also do to make it a lot more secure, have a middleware which encapsulates the database with, for instance, JAX-RS, right? So then there is no more direct access to database needed. So this is what you can do. And by the way, you asked Gluon and didn't get any response, but what you will have to do is to buy commercial support from Gluon. This is how they earn money. So we cannot expect from Gluon, to donate daytime to and listen to the podcast episode with Johan. It's not like he's really great guy and nice guy, but in one point of time we just don't have enough time. Also, if you ask me questions, I cannot just provide you free support all the time, and even I cannot provide you commercial support all the time because our time is limited. So there is not enough time. That's the problem. So so what I will ask Johan, maybe there's an agreement. Maybe you can fix some bugs for him or do something for him, and then you get commercial support for Gluon, or he will try to solve your problem, or maybe assist you with your problem, and you could contribute back the solution. This is what I will ask Johan Voss from Gluon. Okay, so I think this is right behavior. If you need more deeper support, you will have to buy commercial support. So this is what I believe. And yeah, but now JPackage. Look at JPackage. It is based on Java Packager, I think was the origin name. It was built for JavaFX. So this should help you. And what it does is it creates a native application. So there is no more bytecode. You can still decompile native code, but this is way harder than Java bytecode. Okay. Next question. So let's see what happens here in the chat. Not a lot. Perfect. Or perfect. It's sad, there's not a lot, but perfect because we can move faster now. So this is a common question. This is from YouTube comment. Should we put the static assets to a war? You could, but this is unusual. For instance, if you're in the cloud, for instance, Azure or AWS, in Azure recently, I put the assets in so-called blob storage, and this is like a web server without web server. And on Amazon, I put it in S3, so you don't even need a server for that. If you're running on-premise, I would also create two processes. One is the typical web server, and the other one is our REST API. And the only reason is, the observation is, the web part, it moves more frequently, or it gets redeployed more frequently to the backend part. And also the deployment is faster of the assets. For instance, on Microsoft Azure, just copying the assets to Azure is just easy copy command, and everything is on Microsoft Azure. So there's just one click and everything is up and running. And similar story on S3, you only have, there's a tool similar to, you can use FTP-like tools to upload your assets, and they are immediately visible. But, redeploying a war is harder. So you will need, some kind of rolling updates, and it takes at least, I would say, 1 to 2 minutes to deploy a thin war. If you have a fat war or fat jar, how it's called, Uberjar or fat jar, it takes significantly longer. So therefore, for productivity, I would just separate, WAR is, or jar or WAR are the APIs, and the web assets I will put in cloud native storage, S3 or blob storage on Azure, or Nginx or something like this if you're running on OpenShift or Docker or Apache Web Server. So I'm using Apache Web Server and still great. So next question, very good one. In my workshop apps with MicroProfile, this is the AHEX.io workshop. I only use the annotation, the scope annotation once, and the question is why. You don't have to use, so if you don't annotate the classes and inject the classes, so the scope is inherited, which is great usually, because this is what you would like to have. So if you have, let's say, in the boundary or in the JAX-RS, a class annotated with request scoped, whatever you inject becomes request scoped, and if the first class is application scope, everything behind becomes application scoped. This is what I like. So you don't have, to repeat yourself and say you are also application scope, you're also application scoped, right? So, but on Quarkus, you have to annotate everything. And on Quarkus case, what I do, I introduce my own annotations, boundary or control, like a marker annotations. And you can also use dependent, for instance, exactly the same. So if you need an annotation that use dependent, this is the same effect as no annotation. So also in the course, you showed that JAX-RS can be used for rendering of HTML content. How often you use that? Not very often, but this is sometimes useful. Just imagine you could create, dynamic HTML for pre-rendering of let's say server-side rendering of visual example. You have a combo box with all the zip codes of which are preloaded from the database. So you could use something for that, like this. And these apps in MicroProfile workshop, I did it for my blog engine, which rendered on the fly the contents from the backend, and JAX-RS is just perfect for that. And the other, you could also render an individual web component. So sky is the limit. But how often you use it in typical projects is an exception. Yeah. But it's useful to know that it works. And why it works? Well, because you only have to use text/HTML, how to call it, content type, and then you have, a more or less powerful web server. And by the way, if you think about this, you can provide, text HTML, and at the same time application/JSON. And once you can create, JAX-RS can deliver the entire HTML and the otherwise JSON, for instance, right? So then the next question, by the way, his name is Dimitri from Moscow. Dimitri asked me, in his country, in Russia, Spring is preferred to use Spring over JE. So, and this is, I thought a lot about the entire Jakarta, Java, MicroProfile, and all the stuff. And I already mentioned several times on this show there was a survey, a German survey. What is how popularity Spring Boot, Quarkus, Jakarta, and MicroProfile, and this was like Spring was number 1, number 2 was Quarkus, then was MicroProfile, then Jakarta, something like this. But if you think about this, the entire question is, or the entire use case is suspicious, because MicroProfile uses Jakarta heavily. So this is if you take a look at MicroProfile. And the first diagram, so CDR, JSON-P, JAX-RS, and JSON-B come from Java E. So you cannot use MicroProfile without Jakarta E. Now, what I saw is, I don't know whether all, but many Spring projects are actually using Jakarta E APIs. For instance, there's a nice guy from Spring who creates this Spring data. I think Oliver is his name. And he was actually JPA committer. So he joined this spec group, and he was a Spring or Spring Boot also committer. So if we use JPA in Spring, now, is it a Spring application or is it a Jakarta application? This is the interesting story, right? And also, this is old stuff. This was, I think, more than 20 years ago. There was a conference in Hamburg, and the architect, there was a huge project in Hamburg. So actually, lots of hardware was involved there, so I remember. And what the architect said is, because Java E, no, there was the name was J2E back then. Because J2E does not scale and is too complex, they decided just to use EJB and JMS. And I was completely confused, like, what does it mean? So they don't use J2E, and instead they're using JMS and EJB. So, and I asked them, yeah, what do you mean by that? It's like, yeah, I said JMS and EJB are actually part of J2E. And I said, okay, I didn't know that. So, okay, nice. So I think there's lots of confusion, and maybe what people think is that J2E is like you need the entire deployment model and all the roles involved. So this is what I didn't use for maybe 20 years. So most of my projects, microservice projects, there's a war and I push the war whenever I like, and I have my J2E application. And this is also, I have no shared deployments for, I was since 2006 or since Java 6, I would say Java 5, Java 6, we don't have any shared deployment models anymore. So the question is to know, what you are asking is it really like you are using Spring without any Java EE APIs? No servlets, no CDI, no CDIs, of course not, no add inject, no JPA. So this is hard to believe, but maybe. And this is not like people come to me and say they would like to have Spring or Java EE. Usually what happens is client asks me, no, we have to implement this stuff. And they ask me what to do. I explain them, and usually it's a MicroProfile on Java EE on any runtimes they have. Nowadays, Quarkus is also interesting because lots of clients would like to save some money with RAM, and Quarkus is great for that. But Helidon and Micronote would also work. And this is, and they get, you know, the solution and are happy. So, and they don't care whether it is Spring or not. So this is, yeah. And by the way, the documentation of Java EE is perfect. It's just, but this is a little bit fragmented. You know, there's an Open Liberty, they have own tutorials. Pyara, they have own tutorials, and the others, Whitefly. All tutorials are usually compatible, but there is no one tutorial Java EE portal. So that's the problem maybe. Special question from Hans-Georg Löckler. System administrator at the University of Ulm. So I have a special question to your workshop, Effective Web Apps with Web Standards. And there's login JWT, single sign-on, and what he has is role user and role admin, and he would like to deliver different pages dependent on the role. This is my understanding. And how to do that? So first, this is unusual, because you would use the token in the front end, but I would like answer your question in the backend. You could actually use JAX-RS. So we had the question before. You can deliver with JAX-RS. You could map a JAX-RS to JS and deliver different JS files, for instance. How to do that? So the code is what I found, and actually the code is. So how it usually looks like, you can inject the principal, you can inject the JSON Web Token. And then if you have the JSON Web Token, so in the token there are groups, and groups became roles. What you can also do, you can ask the context, for instance, context get is user, how is it called? Is user in role, and get groups are the roles. So then you know which role the user has, and now you can deliver, you know, you can have an if statement, switch statements, or whatever, and deliver different files depending on the role. And the path could be star.js, or could be just point.js files, or whatever. So this is the direct answer to your question. But usually, you would I think what you're asking, or what you would like to achieve is, I would configure the router in the front end differently. So depending on the role, you can show or not show a menu, and you can fetch different contents from the backend. And if you like, join the next AirHacks Live workshop. We could cover this if you ask the question. So I will implement or use routers And this is actually easy to implement in the front end. In the back end, you can use servlet. It's the same story. In servlet, you can inject the principal or in JSON Web Token. Didn't try it yet. I usually use JAX REST, or in EJBs it also works. And then I get the roles, and then I can decide what to do with it. So now Mahitar is a Rails developer, which is interesting because Rails was supposed to kill Java. And if you search in my blog, there are even some comments from DHH, the creator of Rails. And yeah, I was asked in 2006 why I'm using Java, because Rails will take over the world and Java is dead. So you see. And now we get a nice guy from where? India, right? Yeah. And he asked me, how to learn Java E. So I just started learning Java E in MicroProfile. Nice. And thank you for buying the course. But what you should look at the recent MicroProfile workshop, I think is more fun. Yeah. And some good books. I mean, good books. Start the Oracle tutorials. Don't really know the entire tutorial. Just pick what interests you. Are good enough. And I cannot suggest you any books because, I mean, I read whatever I can find, and there is no bad book usually. In all of the books, there is some interesting stuff, right, what you can learn. So if you ask me about which books to read, if you don't have time, read the tutorial and just or just try to implement an application. If there is a knowledge lacking, go to the tutorial or read then more specific book about a specific topic. Yeah. But what I would do is I would just take a look at Jakarta E and MicroProfile committers, and they write books and read these books. For instance, there's Antonio Goncalves book. And he wrote several Java E books, and he's a great guy, and his books are perfect, right? Almost perfect, right? And he also wrote a book about Quarkus, and I think this book is free. So I would also read these books. So this. Then I think Aryan Times, you're right, book. He wrote a book about the definitive guide to whatever. But recently, ProCDI in Java 8. I think recent book. So take a look at people who created actually Java in MicroProfile if you're interested in. I think there's a Quarkus book from John Klingen. Also, I had him on my podcast. Klingen. He also John Klingen Quarkus book. And Kubernetes native microservice with Quarkus. So I would go this route, and and then you can expand, your book universe from there. So, okay. So it means if you listen to my answer, I didn't prepare a lot, upfront about the books, but this is what I would do. Okay, so we already, announced this free course, Redux for free, and you have it for free. Enjoy. DTOS projections and Blaze persistence. So listen to the podcast. How lit HTML happened. Also listen to the podcasts. And this was the issue. Thank you to Christo. And now BN, and his name is BN. Almost BN. He asked me, Liberty versus Whitefire, JBoss ERP versus Liberty Base. Have you ever had to choose between different servers in the current context? Yes, they all ask me, my clients, what server to choose. And my question is, counter question, where you pay support for? Do you have something with Red Hat? Do you have something with IBM? Do you know Payara guys or Tommy, whatever? And then this was the first idea. If you have something already there, then go this route. Or which JDK are you using? Do you have any supported distribution from JDK, Azure Systems, Red Hat, Oracle? So if there's an Oracle shop, use Helidon. So, but what would be the most interesting, runtimes? I would say interesting or the next generation runtimes. I'm not from the runtime perspective, not from API. So I would take a look at Quarkus, very popular, Helidon, and watch Micronaut. So Micronaut, what I don't like in Micronaut is it comes with proprietary API, or for me it looks foreign. I was told for Spring guys it looks familiar, but yeah, for me it's just unusual. But if you use CDI, I also recorded a screencast at YouTube. If you use CDI and the CDI JAX-RS, for instance, is supported, then it looks almost like MicroProfile. So this is what I would do. And if you ask me, if you have just this choice, I would go with OpenLiberty. It's the most modern. I would prefer OpenLiberty over Wildfly, for instance. Okay, so I think we covered. Do I have a good example of structuring JSF project with BCE pattern? I think this is actually a good question. What I usually do in BCE, I have two top-level folders, business and presentation. And in the presentation folder, there is a JSF. So, and in what I would do, all the backing beans would be would be controls or boundaries. So this is what we have to think about, because boundary would be usually the XHTML page and this would be somewhere else, right? So yeah, but the most important thing is we have top level presentation and business. In business are the components with BCE. In presentation we get also components, but they are usually different. There are different names. There is no one-to-one mapping between front-end component and back-end component. So Adam, you haven't even added annotations to the boundary classes, which is why I had the question. Yeah, what I add the annotation is to the JAX-RS. So the boundary, the JAX-RS had annotations and everything was just a POJO. This is what I mean. You don't have to do that. And having a beans with attribute discovery all, yeah. But this is what we used. Thank you. Exactly. So so then we are done. Yeah. Rafael says about securing web pages can be done with security constraints in WebXML. Yes, can, Rafael, yeah, security concerns WebXML, what it means is you cannot access all the path, or if you access the path, you can get 403. I think this is part of Java. You're absolutely right. So we are done. Thank you for watching and see you next month. Bye.